And I already hit record, but I'm going to ask you, how do you pronounce your last name?
Billen, Biln.
Billen. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Angie Billen is a passionate women's empowerment coach and registered clinical social worker with 18 years of experience helping women overcome trauma, abuse, and addiction. Drawing from her personal journey of surviving an abusive relationship, Angie is dedicated to guiding women from surviving to thriving by breaking free from limiting beliefs, healing emotional wounds, and reclaiming their power. With a compassionate and holistic approach, she empowers her clients to navigate life's transitions, inner healing the inner child, and build a fulfilling life filled with clarity, balance, and purpose. Angie is a trusted advocate for resilience, self care, and authentic personal growth. I love that, Angie. Thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I know we were just talking about our journeys. Oh my goodness. So much information. So I'm just going to go ahead and have you start off by you sharing your personal journey of surviving an abusive relationship and how it led you to become a women's empowerment coach.
Yeah, thank you. It's been quite the journey. I would say almost close to 2 decades. I was married to an alcoholic who's also abusive. So it was quite a tumultuous marriage. And women who have been in my situation or who may resonate to this message or this story may feel stuck. And that's literally what I felt for years, right? I just felt stuck. I felt imprisoned in the marriage. I felt like I couldn't do anything to change our situation or our outcomes. So we actually separated at one point, and then we ended up reconciling because my ex had said that he was getting the help that he needed, right? He was going to AA, he was doing whatever he needed to do, but that wasn't the case. So then we ended up separating again because he ended up having an alcohol-induced seizure in front of my kids and I. So that was the point where I just said, enough is enough, and I'm leaving. Like this was too much because it was unhealthy and safe for all four of us, right? So I mean, as you mentioned, I'm a clinical social worker, so it was ironic that I'm going out there, I'm helping women every single day, working with women who have been in similar situations, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be, addictions, mental health. But then I'd come home and it was like I was like this observer in my own life. I couldn't help myself. So in that moment in 2021 is when I decided that, I'm leaving. That's when we actually separated. And that's when I had like this aha moment where I'm like, you know what? I want to help other women. And that's been my passion since then. It's probably always been my passion, but that's when I really feel that passion and said, I'm gonna help somebody, whether it be one woman or 100. I know there's other people who feel how I felt for almost, like I said, 2 decades. So now I'm a life coach and I work with women who are in traumatic or unhealthy relationships or marriages, and they need that guidance and support from someone who can actually help them get, whether it be a safety plan or help them get out of that relationship and rewrite their life story. Like I really work with women to gain their power back.
Wow. It reminds me of, so I don't know if I shared this with you when we were just talking, but when I was 15, I was actually in a abusive relationship. And I remember going to a safe house. I was 15, he was
Mm.
15.
Oh
Isn't
my
that
goodness.
nuts? We were both
That
15
is,
years old.
yeah.
But he was very manipulative, like wouldn't let me go to class. He would
Oh my
like throw
gosh.
me over his shoulder because he wouldn't even let me go to school. Like, we need to talk about
Wow.
this situation now and da da da, push me, grab me.
Hmm.
Oh, yes, and at a young age. And so it's hard when women don't have actually someone to talk to
Yeah.
and they have to keep everything inside, especially at a young age. It's
Hmm.
like, oh my goodness, like what do I do? I
Yeah.
wanted to go ahead and ask you, how do you go ahead and help women rewrite their life stories and move from actually surviving to thriving?
Yes. So I work, well, I work one-on-one with women, but I also do group work. And so I really love to zone in on your inner child healing. And if for those of you who don't know what that is, inner child healing is like, going back to our childhood and reflecting on the events, memories, or traumas that took place that are still impacting you today. So you're going back and really healing that child version of yourself. And it's not to say that you're recreating that trauma or re-traumatizing someone. And this is definitely not like a one-time fix. This is like, healing is a lifetime journey. So it takes time. But until you heal that inner child, you are not going to be able to move forward and evolve because those wounds are still sitting somewhere deep inside you. And that's what I realized with myself. You know, I wasn't able to fix the marriage because I hadn't healed the wounds from my childhood. And when you actually start doing that work, that's when you realize, okay, you know what? I'm recreating patterns, or these patterns keep showing up, or I keep attracting these unhealthy partners and relationships. So we have to really go back into, like I said, those moments and heal those wounds so that we're not recreating these patterns in our current adulthood. And so that's what I do with women is we do that work one-on-one to see like, what is it that you want to heal? And so much comes up, right? Especially when you're in these like toxic relationships where you just can't get out. And a lot of women will say things to me like, why is it that I keep attracting the same type of man in my life? Or why do I keep having the same outcomes? Well, it's because if you're not going to create change, you can't have a different outcome, right?
Right. In order for things
Hmm.
to change around you, you need to yourself need to change. And then the best way is just build that relationship with yourself and start loving on yourself.
Exactly.
And like you said, loving on
Mhm.
that little girl.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't I share this with a lot of my listeners, but I have a picture of my younger self with me all the
Hmm.
time on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Like on my
Okay.
lock screen.
Yeah.
And we're always on our phone, right? So it's the first thing we see.
Yeah.
And then and I don't even have pictures of my own kids. It's my it's my younger self.
But that's okay. That's a great thing.
I
Yeah.
mean, they're everywhere around the house anyway. I have tons of frames
Yes.
of them and
Yeah.
but I look at her every day and I give her love and compassion and say, "Little Gina,
Mm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
We love you so much." When I say we, I say myself and my inner wisdom. We love you so much, because there are all these
Yeah.
voices that are in our head. There's what do they say, the inner child, there's
Hmm.
the inner critic, there's
Hmm.
the intuition,
Yeah.
and then there's the ego. Like
Yeah.
all of those voices are communicating
Yeah.
to us all the time. And so yes, it's important to talk to that inner child. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And I just did a podcast recently on just on the reasons women stay in relationships. And the number one theme that I keep seeing is children, right? For those women who have children with their partner. And we keep like justifying to ourselves that that's why I'm staying, or we turn a blind eye to a lot of the negative behaviors in the partner because of the kids. But you're not keeping your child safe by remaining in that environment, in that abusive household. And that's so important for, I think, women to understand. Your children are literally learning what they live. So until you break that cycle, which is so hard, it's not easy, but it's doable. Like, and that's why I always say to my clients, like, you are the creator of your life, this new life story, this new chapter, whatever you want to call it, the new journey, and you can do it, right? Like, because if I'm able to sit now on the other side and tell you that it's doable, it definitely is. Like, because I know what it feels like. I was in that situation for so many years where I didn't have the resources. I didn't have, someone like myself, a life coach or a professional, or just someone with the life experience to say, Angie, you can do this, right? You're going to be safe. And I think that's what women need to hear is that they're going to be safe.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, can
Yeah.
you actually go ahead and discuss how self-care and authentic, I'm losing my words today. Authenticity play a role in the empowerment journey.
Yeah, self-care is super important, right? So if you're constantly in overdrive, which was again from my own personal experience, that's what I was doing. I was overworking. Like, so I would
Mhm.
spend hours and hours at work because I would dread coming home, right? And then when you come home, you go into autopilot. So then I'm like, making dinner, taking care of the kids, but not really taking care of myself. And I was doing everything and anything to basically avoid what the actual issue was, which was the marriage, the problems, like, like I said, the inner child stuff. So I would say self-care definitely important. And sometimes women are just like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, it's super easy. Like, whether it's spending time out in nature, whether it's going and sitting by the lake and journaling, like journaling was huge for me. So that's a great way to release our emotions, right? On paper. And there's no right or wrong way to journal. Just get those emotions out because otherwise they're trapped inside your mind. And that's when we feel scattered or we start overanalyzing or we get anxious. So self-care is important, whether you do it once a week, make that time for yourself. I always like for myself, I do like a date night with myself. So I put it in my calendar so that it's a priority. And that could be just having a bath, lighting candles. It could be journaling. It could be getting out and doing some yoga. Other things that I really work on with my clients is the gratitude work, affirmations, the breath work is huge. That's so important. So if you start incorporating these grounding techniques into your day-to-day life, you will notice a difference, but it has to be consistent, just like how we go to work or how we, do anything that we're trying to incorporate into our life that matters. Your grounding work has to be a priority for you to create that change. And that's when you'll start connecting to your inner self and really figuring out, who am I? What is the authentic version of me? Because so many women, as you know, when we have kids, we start to lose our own identity. Like you're just doing everything, like again, in overdrive. You you don't prioritize yourself. So women always put themselves last. Everyone else comes first, your kids, your partner, your ex, whoever it is, your in-laws, your parents. And we forget who we are. So I want when I work with women, I always say, I want you to figure out who you are, to the core, who is the real you. And that's what we're going to tap into. Yeah.
Yes, and
Mhm.
it's me time is very important.
Yes.
And with the children, I notice that when I start doing my own like meditation, breathing practices, the
Hmm.
kids want to do it too. Like
Yeah.
yesterday, the youngest one wanted to meditate with me. It's just for 15 minutes. I'm doing this
Yeah.
little practice for 15 minutes until the third of, actually until tomorrow. And like I told you, his throat has been hurting him. And
Hmm.
we were both meditating and breathing. And then he's like, I feel better. I said, all right, so you're gonna go to school tomorrow? I said, not that better. I said, "Ugh." But it's good to bring them into those practices, and then they
Yes.
can start actually learning how to do those somatic therapies to move whatever
100%.
whatever their we all have different lifetimes. And so for
Yeah,
them, whatever trauma they've had from many
exactly.
moons ago, who knows?
Yeah, and I think it's important to teach our kids, this next generation, that they're allowed to feel, they're allowed to have emotions, they're allowed to process emotions. I don't think that was so much the culture, maybe for us or even like our parents or ancestors, right? So that's what I really try to incorporate for these women is for the next generation, if you want to be the best version of yourself, then also teach that to your children. And I do the same as you. Like I sit, we journal together every night. They don't like it, but that's okay.
It's a practice.
It's a practice, yeah. And I'm just hoping something will stick, right?
Totally. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now, talking about trauma and healing, how does unresolved trauma from abuse or addiction actually affect a woman's ability to heal and grow?
Unresolved trauma, yeah. Like, so like I said, the critical step that I work on with clients and that I've actually experienced myself is the inner child healing. I think the next core step that I like to work on with women is your core programming. And if sometimes people say, well, what is that? So your core programming is really understanding how we operate and how we live. Like, what is our reality, right? It's questioning why you do what you do. And and obviously that's a very simple question, but it's not, because a lot of us are programmed to run a certain way. It's our subconscious telling us, well, this is how it's always been. This is Angie, how you feel safe. So you're going to keep repeating these patterns. So it's understanding your triggers, your automatic processes, your behaviors, and then breaking them down and rewiring them. And when you start doing that, you will start making positive and healthy decisions with intention versus your subconscious is constantly running almost like a loop, like a movie replaying over and over. So that's again another part of the work that I do with women is figuring out your core programming. For me, my core programming told me that marriage is forever. And if you leave the marriage or if the marriage ends, you're considered a failure. So I was like it was like an automatic process for me to think, well, you know what? I'd rather stay in this unhealthy marriage than be considered a failure to my community, to my family, to like our society. So that was what kind of kept me in there. But obviously there was a point in my life where then I was like enough is enough. And that's where my intentional programming kicked in. And I said, you know what? I have the freedom and I have the choice to leave this and recreate my life. So in terms of like trauma, we're so used to doing things a certain way and we normalize what is healthy, what's not healthy. Like for a while for me, like I normalized, the screaming, the swearing, the fighting, the breaking things. throwing things, slamming doors. It was all very normal. And then when I left that marriage or that environment, it took a long time for me to calm down. Like it took a long time to even sleep, consistently for like a few hours because I was so used to my mind going thinking that something bad's going to happen. There was always a fear. So I think that's something really important for women to understand is like if you're in a traumatic situation for so many years, it will take time to kind of wind down, but you can do it. Like, with the right supports, with the right self-care, with the right coping mechanisms, and the right positive people in your life, you can do it. Mhm.
Yes. And what steps did you go ahead and take for yourself to heal? Because there's a lot of wounding, man.
Oh,
How many years is that? Seriously, you slam doors, yelling, and being living with an alcoholic. That's traumatic.
yeah. So in terms of my healing, when we initially separated, I actually started the inner child work. It was a very intense program. And just like, it was synchronicity where I met this woman. Turned out she played a huge role in my life. She taught me how to we did a lot of energy work together. So she started with the Reiki and then we did the inner child program. Like I said, it was a very intense program. I think it was like 14 hours in 2 weeks or something. So it was very emotionally draining and heavy, but the things that came up for me were like amazing. So, that was the first step is really realizing, okay, again, the inner child healing the wounds, healing those wounds. And then it helped me connect to myself to figure out what do I want for my life and who am I? Because I felt like I was so lost. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was constantly emotional. And again, those are some of the triggers and the symptoms that I want women to start recognizing, like, are you feeling like you're fatigued? The hair loss, maybe it's, I don't know, like weight loss, weight gain, lack of sleep, not sleeping well, chronic fatigue, chronic pain, all of these things that were showing up in my life year after year, but I was choosing to ignore them. And so when you are healing, you start really, you step back and you look at your life and yourself as an observer and you say, like, these are not normal symptoms. Like, I should not be going through this every single day. So for me, it was one self-awareness, being really aware of my environment, how I feel, the changes I want in my life, but then healing those wounds and then doing the core programming work, really understanding again what my core programming was, why I was doing what I was doing, and why I was recreating patterns in my life. And then at that point, also understanding your values because your values play a huge role in your journey. Like for you, Gina, I don't know what your top values would be, but for me, they're like family, respect, integrity. But then when I started looking back, I wasn't aligning with those values, right? Every single value was misaligned. And obviously, when your values are not aligned, you're living in chaos. Like every single day was pain, suffering, hurt, and chaos. But when we start aligning with our values, you'll see that your life just flows and the relationships in your life are very fulfilling and supportive and loving. And that's where that inner love comes in. So that's what I really had to learn was to love myself because I didn't, and I can't say it's just because of the marriage that came from before, like that came from my childhood. So these are things that I would like to really emphasize is work on that self-love, work on feeling worthy, validated, really know that you're a priority. And I think a lot of women, including myself, we forget that we're not a priority.
Oh my gosh, I think
Yeah.
in high school was the worst. It was like the comparison game and we oh, she looks better. She's thinner. I want to be like her. And
Yeah.
we just look at everybody else, but we didn't look to ourselves like,
Yeah.
hey, what does Gina want? What does Angie want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can
And
you
and
actually?
I mhm. So no, I was going to say that, and it's good that you bring that up because I think that's where a lot of our limiting beliefs start, right? In high school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and speaking of limiting beliefs, what are some of those common limiting beliefs
Mhm.
that us women have?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and it's unfortunate, but I think if I kind of tap into what I felt, it was one generally just I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good wife. I wasn't feeling like I looked good, like physically. And, a lot of that goes into like the trauma that I was experiencing because, like I said, I wasn't sleeping well. There was times where I was, not a good weight, like I was underweight. Or sometimes I would binge eat and comfort eat, then I was probably feeling like I was overweight, like, just little things like that, like physical things. So not feeling like I looked good enough. not, I didn't feel like I was doing a good job being, like I said, a wife, a mother. But what I hear from a lot of my clients is that I'm not valuable. Like I'm just not worthy of being in this relationship. A lot of women tell me like I don't feel like I'm good at anything, or I don't even have a career that I enjoy. And so it's a lot of just negative statements that we tell ourselves, right? And a lot of women actually tell me, and this has been a really strong theme, is I can't leave because I can't tear my family apart. I don't want to upset my kids and I feel guilty. So that guilt is a huge theme. And that's something that we've got to change, right? Like I said, if you're not feeling safe in your household, in your environment, how could your kids feel safe? Yeah.
That is a true
Hmm.
statement. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm remarried now, and that's why I have a stepson. I just call him my son, but he's a stepson.
Hmm.
And my husband and his ex-wife, they
Hmm.
only lasted like 5 months married
Hmm.
because it was on the flip side where she was a little bit cuckoo. She has a lot of healing to do, and we pray
Hmm.
for her, of course. But he knew he needed to get out of that relationship right away.
Hmm.
And so, because he knew it wasn't safe, and she was pregnant at the time, and she tried to take his son away and move away to
Oh.
Florida. They were living in California at the time, in the
Hmm.
Bay Area where we live now. And he was fighting and fighting and fighting. Like he had to finally fire all of his lawyers and represent himself. He's like, I'm going to study child law,
Yeah.
family court law, and I'm going to go in there and represent myself. And he did. And now they're 50-50, which is beautiful because
Wow.
the child does need both the mom and dad. Just because the parents are not getting along, the children need both the love. But once they see them
Yes.
fighting and bickering, all that, it's going to
Yeah.
damage that child. Oh my goodness. I,
100%.
oh my goodness. So it's wise to, yes, not listen to your family member. Oh, you need to say because of, no, make that choice for yourself. Say, no, I
Yeah.
do not want, for myself first, do not want to be in an abusive relationship. And then for the
Hmm.
children's sake.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you bring that up because family plays a huge role, right? Like that goes hand in hand with our limiting beliefs, right? If we
Hmm.
start looking at like where do our values come from, our core programming? A lot of it is family dynamics, family beliefs, cultural beliefs, religious, spiritual, society. So if we can start really figuring out, is this my belief or is this somebody else's? Like, is this passed down to me from my ancestors? It's important that you reflect on that and really identify what are my beliefs. And that's again a part of the work that I do with women is I really want you to figure out who you are, and who you want to be going forward because you want to live a life full of purpose, right? And when we talked about authenticity, it's about honoring yourself, not somebody else, not appeasing somebody else. And that's a part of why I think a lot of women struggle to leave. It's because of like the limiting beliefs, but also like trying to fulfill all these societal, I don't know, norms,
Yeah.
expectations. Yeah. And,
I
and I
know,
can
right?
relate culturally, like I can relate. Like it wasn't okay to be, even now, like I still feel like there's a lot of stigma and shame around being separated or divorced, right? And
Yes.
and so that, yeah, and so a lot of women have trouble being on their own. And that's again another question that I get from women is how will I live alone or how can I be a single mom, right? I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
ever felt that. I felt that too. I was like,
Yeah.
am I going to be able to do this?
Yes, there was a time where I didn't even have any of my children, and
Mm,
I was by myself trying to recover and get better. And that was hard. That was
yeah.
hard, but I needed to take care of myself first. This goes
Yes.
back to what we were saying. I needed to take care of myself. Once I got healthy and recovered, then my children see me transformed. Now my older one was 9 at the time, the younger one was 2 at the time, so he doesn't remember
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
But the older one remembers. He was
Yeah.
there. Oh my goodness, it was horrible. But he's
Yeah.
he's doing so well now. He's thriving. He even wrote me a letter to my favorite person. I was like, "Oh, my
Oh.
sweetie, thank you for
Oh.
making me cry." But I love the children so much.
But that's such a powerful message, right? Like
Right.
your child has now overcome his or her own trauma and is thriving. And I think that's so powerful to share with other women. Like, if you can do it, if I can do it, they definitely can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be the
Yeah.
example. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I hear you. My daughter is 14 now, my son's 12. But so yeah, my daughter, the elder, she witnessed a lot. Like she witnessed a lot of her own trauma. And so it's similar to you, like, we're constantly working through it, but that having that openness and those open discussions has been really helpful.
Mm.
Just allowing them to feel what they feel, telling them that it's not their fault what they experienced, right? Because again, a lot of my clients will say, like, well, how do I explain this to my kids, or how do I normalize things for them? And again, it's doable, but you have to put the work into yourself so that you can be that reflection to your child.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, speaking about clients, can you actually share a success story from one of them who's transformed their
Mhm.
life through your coaching?
Yeah, actually, I love I love sharing those stories. I actually just spoke to a client a couple days ago who separated from her partner 3 years ago. Very similar to my situation, but I'm not sure what's going on with him now, but he was an addict, alcoholic, drug addict. They had a very abusive relationship, very toxic, two children that they shared. So 3 years ago, when she started working with me, she ended up actually following through and filing a separation. They're still legally separated. But when I talked to her, because I still work with her, I'm just amazed at her progress. Like, she is now thriving. She is parenting her two children on her own. But she's also doing a lot of the self-care and the grounding exercises, and she continues to do it, which I love. Like, she's like, I'm getting out there, going for my walks. I'm putting that self-care in, whatever it is, whether it's spending time with friends, family, whatever. But she's just such a good role model. And I love hearing stories like that because sometimes, we have doubts, we have self-doubt, so we go back to the partner. And she had a lot of those doubts, but she was actually able, she persevered, and she was able to really work through the emotions. And she continues to work through the emotions. And that's, again, another message I want to share with women is you're going to have doubts. You're going to have these moments where you're like, should I just go back? Like, it was just easier, and sometimes it's because of kids, sometimes because of finances. Um, but if you take one step forward and just keep taking small steps, baby steps, whatever, you will get that outcome that you want. I think when we start releasing control and not being so worried about the outcomes or the controlling the outcome, that's when you can trusting your intuition, trusting the process, and things will flow. And that's when, you'll have that that positive journey that you want. So with this client of mine, like I said, 3 years ago, I started working with her. We still work together, but the difference in her mindset, the positivity she shares with me, like it's amazing. Like, I see that she's now a more present person, but also a present mother. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love success
Mhm.
stories because it brings so much inspiration. And then you are
Mhm.
inspiring too because you've been through it, right? Oh,
I
I love
have, yeah.
stories. I love
Yeah.
stories. Now, what do you think are the biggest societal barriers to women's empowerment, and how can they overcome it?
Yeah, so societal barriers, like I said, first of all, like, it's good to identify what are some of the, which will link to your limiting beliefs. What are some of the societal barriers and challenges or norms? So things like, like I said, culturally, maybe it's not okay to be separated or divorced. So one, that stigma, that shame. Other societal barriers are like, women can't survive on their own, or how are you gonna support your children? And I had to listen to that from my ex-mother-in-law like for years. And she's like, it's tough out there. You're not gonna be able to survive as a single mother. And I was like, okay, I think I can do it. But it was really feeding into my own self-doubt because then I would be like, maybe I can't, And again, that ties into your feelings of unworthiness or not valuing yourself or not feeling validated. So I would say, like, to break those, again, let's start with the inner child healing, because I want you to really reflect on your wound and what some of the core programming was that you learned as a child or a teenager. And then, like I said, tying that into your values. If you know your values, that is like the foundational step for transformation. But when you don't know them, then that's when you start feeling really like scattered, or that's when you have doubts or insecurities. So if you can really figure out those 3 steps, which I would help you with, that's what I guide you with, you're going to be on the right journey, right? And then it doesn't really matter what the societal norms or beliefs are because you're working towards honoring yourself, whoever you are in, like, to your core. Yeah.
I
And
love
I
that.
don't know if you went through that process, but like, I felt like I didn't know who I was for years.
Oh my goodness. That's why I went to the bottle. That's why I went to the bottle because I'm
Yeah.
literally, I was here like, I don't belong here on earth. Something else is,
Mm.
this is not right. I feel conditioned. I feel like there's too many rules. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm in this prison planet. And I went to the bottle to escape reality because I didn't like what I was experiencing here on earth. Didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Once I then drank, it was just a horrible, horrible experience having to, go to jail, go to rehab constantly, and just be very ill. And it was finally
Yeah.
at that turning point where I was like, okay, it's either life or death. And I was thinking about my children
Mm.
at the time. I'm like, no, I have to choose me so I can live for my children.
Hmm.
What would it be like without a mother for them? That's not right.
Yeah.
And a healthy mother that.
Yeah.
And so I had to then I did it on my own. Like I had
Wow.
guidance. Like I made that decision. No, I mean I take that back. I didn't do that on my own. It was I had to surrender first
Mm.
and then was given the guidance then to
Hmm.
do it on my own.
Hmm.
And then that itself made me, I don't know, was it called a miracle? I just didn't
Wow.
want to drink anymore. I remember coming home from the hospital because I was very ill. I was hospitalized.
Hmm.
And there was a bottle of vodka there. I was like, no, thank you. And this is the time I was living by myself.
Wow.
I didn't have my children with me.
Yeah.
And then I had to go through this whole transformation. And what did I do first? I went to a community where I'm like, okay, values, morals. I want to be
Mm.
like people who are closer to God. So that's what I
Hmm.
did. And then I started working out, got myself a
Mm.
mentor, with a
Mm.
mindset coach. I
Yeah.
kind of, AA and the devil stuff didn't really work out for me. I tried it and I just didn't align. So I needed to do something different. And I really need to
Hmm.
focus on my inner child, my mindset, to get rid of those limiting beliefs and start doing different practices for
Yeah.
myself. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I did like a whole journey of self-love. And then wow. And then I really was like, okay, I'm starting to know myself more. And
Yeah.
what really made me know myself in 2020 when we had that pause. That
Yeah.
pause allowed us to really tap into our gifts because I
Yeah.
had a lot of time on my hands, helping my kids, of course, with their schoolwork and everything,
Yeah.
because I actually had them back and it's much better now.
Yeah.
But I learned how to cook. I was loving plants and I was learning how to plant. I was focusing on how to do a garden. And I was like, these are things that I love. I started doing, learning how to create my own business during podcast things.
Mm.
I come from a massage therapy background. I was in the spa business for over 17 years.
Yeah.
I didn't need a computer, Angie. I just had my
Yeah.
cell phone and I had to learn how to use a freaking computer. Okay. And now I'm like, I have, my husband asked me, and he's a mechanical engineer. So he's with a PhD, he's very intelligent.
Hmm.
But he comes to me, asking me computer stuff, tech stuff. I'm like, you're asking me for tech stuff? So you would be surprised if you just go and be still, have that awareness
Hmm.
first, like you said, be
Hmm.
still within yourself and then just be like, okay,
Yeah. And
guide me.
I think that's where a lot of people get uncomfortable, right? Is that stillness, that solitude, because we're not taught that. So again, going back to your societal beliefs, we're not taught to be still. Like life is so hectic, and so it's unnatural, it's unusual. And even for myself, like even now, like I said, like I had to literally train myself to sleep better, and it was weird. It was like, what's going on? Like there's too much peace and calm right now. So I had to really adjust to that. But I agree, like you have to learn, when something's uncomfortable, I always tell my clients, then go for it. Like that's when you know it's the right moment or the right emotion or the right process. So really sit through that pain versus you, like you said, maybe going to the bottle or going to maybe you're overworking or, going to whatever negative behavior that you usually go to. And even for myself, like there was a period in the marriage where I was drinking a lot more than usual. And it, again, what you said resonates like to numb because I was like, I can't change anything. I'm so unhappy. The marriage sucks. Like, I was angry, I was resentful. So I had to really step back and be like, this is not who I am because it didn't feel well. Like there was always like a guilt. And I'm like, this is not who I am. So I had the same questions that you were asking, like, there's got to be a bigger purpose to life, like what is it that I'm here to do? When you start asking those questions, they will be answered as long as you're willing to put the work in.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, where can our listeners go ahead and connect with you? And you do have an offering too. Can you go ahead and
I do,
share
yes.
that?
So I just finished creating my 8-week program. It's called Get the Love You Deserve. It's going to be available in the new year, in January. So if you want to do some deeper work with me, definitely, follow my socials. My website is angiebiln.ca. That's ANGIEBILN.ca. My socials where you can follow me are Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. Same name, Angie Biln, so ANGIEBILN. Yeah, follow because I'm always talking about what's going to be coming up next, whether it's a masterclass or like the 8-week program. But if any of what we discussed today is resonating with you, then I really, really, really want you to do the deeper work because it is going to be like a game changer for you. Hmm.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. And just last question, what does true empowerment mean to you?
Hmm. True empowerment. I think it's living a life with purpose, honoring yourself, and not having any of the emotions, like the negative emotions, like the guilt or the self-doubt, for whatever decision you make. So waking up every morning feeling empowered means having gratitude and then not having doubts or guilt about whatever it is you're going to do that day, doing everything you can for yourself. So I think empowerment for me is always put yourself first. Like as a woman, you're the priority. When you start putting yourself first and really connecting with your inner self, that's when you're going to feel empowered because every decision is going to be like, this is right. This is like the right path, and I'm on the right path.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yes, and any
Yes.
last words or thoughts you'd like to share?
Um, no, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope to be a guest soon, or maybe you can be a guest with me soon.
Yes, that'd be
Yes.
awesome.
I would
I
love to
love that.
learn more about your journey as well.
Oh boy.
So powerful. It's so powerful,
Yes, I
yeah.
love this is what I love doing. I love hearing about people's journeys and how they got from where they were and where they're at
Mhm.
now, and then their whole transformation and what they've done to create love in their life and how they're helping spread the love out there as well.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I truly enjoy. So thank you so much, Angie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of
Bye-bye.
course.